Hey there, Cheesemeisters. Welcome back to the Peach Pod. That would have been Louis Jordan's, one of my favorite Louis Jordan songs, Beware. It's not in this episode because there are no songs in this episode, but it is a song about just your innocent jazz man, just trying to warn all the fellas out there that if they don't pay attention, if they don't watch out, they're going to get hooked. And because these women, Jack, they're looking for a husband. And you're talking to somebody who knows. So he's wanting to warn them about all the things that these women will do to get you hooked into a marriage. And that felt thematically appropriate for Neil and Allison and her subterfuge.
Oh, darn. These poor men. It's a really hard time out there for them.
You know what? This episode is kind of about how it's just a hard time out there to be a guy. Mostly about how it's a hard time out there to be a kid, I think. This week, Cheesemeisters, we're talking about Season 2, Episode 7, Camping Trip. Original air date August 29th, 1991. I am Jeff, and it's not that I didn't look at the weather report. It's that I didn't believe the weather report. And joining me on the other end of the internet is my host,
Leslie, and my planets need aligning in the Yosemite territory.
Oh my God, of course I do. Everyone's planets need aligning. I think that's a solid reason to go on a camping trip.
They've needed aligning ever since that squirrel hit the satellite and threw us into the alternate timeline.
Wait, when did this happen? I don't know about the squirrel satellite thing. Did I miss this news story?
This happened in... Hold on. What year did the squirrel hit the thing sending us into the alternate timeline?
2012?
2012.
2014, maybe?
I want to...
2014, probably.
Listen, we've done extensive...
It was a weasel.
Oh, it was a weasel.
Was it Pauly Shore? Buddy.
No, it was not.
Weasel.
But yeah, a weasel from my researcher.
Uh-huh. Megadittos to your research team.
Thank you very much. Oh, listen, we do what we can here in New York.
Oh, no, sorry, April 2016.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does make more sense.
2016, we got sent into the darkest timeline by a weasel. Look it up.
So I have a few things that I need to say all of a sudden that I didn't know that I needed to say prior. One, I love the idea that Walter is sitting back there and you turned around and asked him a question about a squirrel in an alternate timeline, and he didn't think for 1 second, what the fuck is happening right now?
No, he knew immediately what I was talking about because he put me onto this.
Of course. But he also thought that's a reasonable thing to come up at the beginning of this episode about a camping trip.
Yes.
So I like that. The second part is you probably don't know about Pauly Shore being the weasel. Am I right about that?
I feel like somewhere in the dark recesses of my mind, I do.
Buddy. Yeah. Pauly Shore is the weasel. And spoilers, Pauly Shore shows up in an episode of 90210.
Nice.
It'll take a while for us to get there, and you wouldn't recognize him unless you were like, holy shit, I think that's Pauly Shore. And you wouldn't recognize him at all, because I'm sure if I showed you like a picture of two people and one of them had a t-shirt on that said, I am Pauly Shore, you would say, which one of those is Pauly Shore? I think that's how little you know who Pauly Shore is. But
I know the name.
There you go. There's nothing wrong with knowing the name of the weasel. So there you go, buddy.
I hope we have some ASMR fans who just like delighted in the clicking.
Well, we're just gonna loop that. It'll just be the Jeff does the weasel ASMR clip. We're gonna be YouTube famous. I can't wait. Yeah, I don't know. We ended up somewhere just now, and it wasn't my fault.
Nope, it was mine. I take full responsibility for that.
But I'll take it. So before we get into camping trip, Is there anything that we missed from Pass Not Pass?
Oh God.
Do you miss the Hookie Lao? There is something that we didn't miss, and I went back and double checked this morning because I worried at the beginning of this episode that I might have missed it. Here's what we didn't miss. We did not miss any mention of Iris moving back to California.
No, we did not miss any mention of that.
Because at the beginning of this episode, Dylan's mom, Iris, has moved back from California and is, I don't know, living with him or near him or parenting in some fashion. And they act like we know this, but we don't know this. It really comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So that's where this episode starts. So camping trip, what happens in this episode?
Quite frankly, the entire 90210 gang, minus Scott, because he's still MIA.
Yep, still in Oklahoma or wherever he went for the summer.
Wherever. One of those O states. Yeah. They all go on a camping trip, and a comedy of errors ensues. And for some reason, they befriend a couple on their honeymoon, and this couple decides that a group of teenagers should be involved in their marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. And Dylan's having a time.
Ooh, is he?
From the start of the episode to the end of the episode, Dylan is having a time.
Are we having fun yet?
Are we having fun? That was one of the other things I was going to ask at the beginning of the episode, was whether we were having fun. But I forgot, because I forgot all the things I was going to say at the beginning of this episode. So yeah, Dylan has a tough time dealing with Iris being here, dealing with his life and every aspect of it. Dylan takes a couple drinks, pukes his guts out, and saves Brandon from dying.
Like you do.
Like you do. Like
someone else got to be the hero for once.
That is, yeah, they did. And that's, although Brandon also got to be the hero, because after everything was said and done, he talked Dylan down from his, sad state of affairs. I don't know. I looked some stuff up earlier this week, because we talked about this a little bit, and it doesn't really fit into what we were talking about here, but I want to sort of slide over and chat about it, and then we can come back to what happened in this episode. Remember how we talked about in the beginning when I was telling you, hey, the 90210 really didn't get big until the summer episodes, right? So I went and was trying to find ratings, episode by episode ratings, like viewers, Nielsen ratings, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not IMDb ratings, like this one got a 6.2 or something, because who cares? Not what we're talking about. So, and the premiere, Class of Beverly Hills, got 11 million viewers. And the show fell into the single digits after the second episode. Like it was 7, it was in the 7s and the 8s and the 9s, and stayed right around that spot until the finale. Until the finale of season 1 jumped up to 15 million viewers.
Valid.
Now, go ahead and look up, people, because I don't feel like doing it, what the number one show last week got viewer-wise. Number one in the world for Nielsen ratings probably wasn't more than 15 million people. So, and this was not a hit, right? When it comes back, May to July, right? July 11th, it comes back 19 million viewers. It took a jump.
Wow.
And this show is in the high teens. This show is in the high teens until episode 14, the next 50 years, which I'm gonna need to tell you right now that when we get close to episode 14, I need you not to read the synopsis. Okay. I don't know what it's going to say, but I don't want you to know anything, because remember back in season 1 when I said, hey, there's some stuff in season 2 that I very much would like you to not know anything about, and you're probably going to know less about it than we did at the time because of the previews of the next week's episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's the one, and I really don't want you to get a preview of it. Anyway, that one jumps up to 22 million.
Oh my god.
Yeah, in part, I think because, holy fuck, 2 episodes after that, 28 million.
Oh my god. I'm so excited.
So this show has blown up. Okay, it is massive, massive, massive at this point. We've made it through the summer, and now it's time to transition back to school. So they go camping. And I just wanted to put a spotlight on where those ratings are because it's part of the story of the show of how big it gets. Starting in the second season.
I needed that jolt of excitement because all I felt this episode was, huh?
Yeah, left you cold?
It left me a little cold, much like
Okay.
much like the gang was when they first got to the camping site.
Cold and wet.
I don't know why. It seemed to go in places that I wasn't expecting. Like, I had a feeling it was going to be a heavy episode because someone's going to get hurt. Like, it says disaster strikes in the synopsis.
Okay.
But this one ended up being oddly heavy on the talking. Like, again, and just, again, I wasn't expecting the couple.
Right.
I still don't really get their place in it, but I'm guessing it's supposed to be foreshadowing. Dylan feels like a mistake in his life, and this is why he has problems. And this is why we all want to cradle him in our arms and fix him.
I think that's possible. I've never thought about like why Neil and Allison are in this episode. I think because I'm so used to at this point the dramatic impetus coming from outside.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Sandy and Jerry, or Cheryl coming to town, or I don't know, Sky and her need to hire a teenager to feed her fish and live at her house while her shit gets repossessed or whatever. Like, it's all like all of the motivations are external. Like they meet the shitty kids on the baseball team that Jim coaches. Or, I mean, it's all from the outside. So there's always got to be somebody to come in and take a dump in the punch bowl.
Yeah.
But
then
so I never considered the why, but
yeah, and then for the near-death experience to happen in like the last act of the episode
is 35 seconds of the episode.
Yes!
Yeah.
I was like, where and why? Like, okay, weird way to make Dylan feel necessary in this world.
Yeah.
Like, because we don't always get that extreme to feel.
Yeah.
I mean, I know some people do, but we can't always bank on I'm going to save someone's life so that I feel like my life is worth living.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I think so. Let's talk about let's start at the end of the episode with the thing that doesn't fit, except for in the way you just said. Like this episode is very heavy and very one act, like one room play. You know, it's everybody stuck in a room, and which gives you the chance to bounce people off each other and have bigger conversations. Which actually, it is super heavy this episode, but I liked that they did that, and we'll have to come back and talk. But by the end of it, like there's this whole thing where Brandon falls off the side of a mountain and Dylan saves his life, and that's the only part of the episode I ever remember.
Of course,
I don't remember the conversations about divorce and how hard it is to be like a teenager and wanting to be older and not wanting to be older. I remember the stuntman hanging from the cliff in such a way that if he just like put his foot down, he'd be fine.
Yep.
Like all you had to do is put your foot down. You could put your left foot down and then kind of lay over and you can rest right there. It's fine. It's totally okay. But he's flailing and shit.
Well, and the way that Brandon is holding onto the ledge, I'm like, there is no strain in your arms whatsoever. I know you're standing. And like, listen, I rock climb indoors, you know, the safe way to do all this. I'm fairly certain if you're holding yourself, you're not going to be able, especially as a teenager who isn't working his upper body strength a ton, gravity is not going to work in your favor on reaching for a friend's arm that's out of reach when the lower half is unsupported.
I think that's very true. And also, like, I don't know if you noticed this, but I noticed it at one point in my many, many viewings of this episode, and so now I never not notice it. When they, you know, the first shot is down on Brandon as he's like, oh, hanging. And then they do the upshot of Dylan laying there ready to like reach over. There are like 3 rocks under Dylan's chest that are not connected to the ground that were clearly just placed there so that they could fall.
Yeah.
Like if in real life, if Dylan lays down, he probably shoves those things out of the way. You know, he doesn't lay on the 3 biggest, loosest rocks he can.
Yeah.
In order to have them fall on his friend's head. And they just don't match the color of the rocks around them. So it's like, well, those are working rocks right there. They put those rocks in there for the specific purpose of having them fall.
Shout out to Stunt Rocks.
Oh, yeah. You know what? Unions for Stunt Rocks.
Yes.
They should be protected.
They should.
Because who knows? But if you look at that whole scene as the culmination of Dylan's journey through this episode, or even his journey through the first 7 episodes of this season, and it's not the culmination of anything. It's episode 7 of 28 or whatever the hell we got going on this season. But it is, up until this point, Dylan has taken more than he's given. Right? From those around him.
Yeah.
He has been in a place of needing help, needing support. And this silly bullshit with Brandon at the very end gives him a chance to provide support, to be someone who helps others, not someone who needs the help of others.
Yeah.
So I get why we need something like that for Dylan, because he's in a bad place.
Yeah.
And we talked about it a couple of episodes ago. But he's been in a bad place since the end of last season, since only 15 million people watched this show.
Yeah.
Like, you know, his girlfriend was going to leave town, and then she's not. She might be pregnant, but then she's not. And then you break up, and that sucks, and it's really hard. And then you get injured and have to live in her house, and then you make out with her, and then her dad gets mad, and then you have to go to Hawaii to live with your crazy-ass mom. And it's just one thing after another for him. And then you come back, and Brenda still doesn't quite want to get back together with you, but feels the need to tell you that she went after an older guy.
Yeah.
On the beach club at the... I mean, like... I guess Brenda feels like she needed to, like, unburden herself there a little bit because she's feeling bad about how she treated Andrea with Mr. Chris Suter. But, like, that's not information Dylan needs to know. It's not germane to your relationship with Dylan. It's just like, I don't know, plot exposition. It has to go somewhere, I suppose.
Well, and then in this episode, they mentioned, too, I think it was Dylan said, I know we wanted to break up to see other people. And I'm like, that's not the reason.
Right.
And also, like... It just gets my goat when they write, because they did the same thing with Joey on Dawson's Creek. Like, these young women characters make the smart choice, the best choice for them to take some time away from relationships and focus on themselves, which is great. And then what do? They put other men in the mix or they rewrite it to go, oh, we just wanted them to see other people. It's like, what is so wrong with sticking to your guns and these? Because I think it's great that Brenda was like, I want to just stay a kid. I don't want to deal with these adult responsibilities. Want to keep it simple.
Right.
And I mean, you can still date and do that, but like, that wasn't why they broke up.
It wasn't. And that's interesting that you say that, because I think that that idea of like the conversations that they're having in the camp when everything's all wet and soggy and shit, and they're like, don't you hate being stuck at this age where there's like you feel ready to do all of these things, but you're not allowed. Like, you can't go buy beer. You have to get shaken down by old people or whatever happens to Steve. I love that Steve fails at getting beer in this episode.
Yes.
So quickly after the pronouncement that he will deliver. Like,
if I say I'll deliver, I'll deliver.
He's very sure of himself and fails miserably, and it's really funny.
Yeah.
So you can't buy beer. You can't go into a club and hear good music. You can't vote, even though you might know more about the election than your parents do.
Yeah.
That conversation is so specifically targeted at the teenage audience of this show.
Yeah.
Which, like, I remember feeling all of those things. In high school, I wasn't interested in drinking, so it wasn't that wasn't a part of it for me. Where I was like, "Ooh, I want to be able to whatever," and I didn't feel disenfranchised. I was like, "I'll get to vote." When I turn 18, I understand what that is. Those are the rules. It's fine. But the idea of not being able to go someplace and hear live music, that hit. That's a thing I felt when I was ages 17 to 20. I just really wanted to go to a place where music was playing. I wasn't interested in the alcohol. And I was very rarely allowed to do that. It was very rarely all ages shows that I could find my way to. So I felt that. And in that conversation, they're all like irritated by that thing, except for Brenda and Dylan.
Yeah.
Dylan, I don't remember his reaction to that part of the conversation, because his general reaction is just like, everything is terrible. Yeah, I have been trod upon.
Yeah.
Dylan already feels enough responsibility and enough. He feels like he's already an adult in himself. He feels that way to us a lot too, I think.
Yeah.
And Brenda is like, I don't want to move out anymore. Like, I'm not feeling that desire to be older the way that I was before. Like, I felt like I needed to have sex to grow up. I did. Boy, that caused a lot of complications. Yeah. I felt like I wanted to move out and be on my own. I did. Boy, that was unpleasant. Maybe let's slow it down. Like, maybe let's not all try to grow up. But everybody else in the room is like, I really want to be older. And then they're presented with a newlywed couple who have a fight. And that reinforces this idea that they don't really want to get older.
Yeah.
But the way they come to that conversation with them is from the point of view of being the child. Right? Like, their feedback for Allison and Neil is divorce is really hard on the kids. Like, I've been through it. He's been through it. My parents are separated. Theirs are together. I love the way that Kelly so quickly goes through the room and is like, hers aren't, mine are, his are, theirs aren't, his are. Like, she's just bouncing through the marital status of all the people she knows. And that's their experience. They are children. They're still kids. But they're really feeling like they don't want to be, even though when presented with a real world problem, they are. Like, their perspective is childlike.
Yeah.
Which is important for that episode. It's important for the conversation with Neil and Allison. Although, why do you go talk to the high school children about your marital problems?
Right. That's so many weird back and forth, like from Neil starting to make out with Allison and get frisky with her in front of kids. Just fucking ask them to leave. Just fucking ask them to leave. Don't get, because I mean, they did a role reversal. I would have imagined like a teenage boy going, cool. But no, Amber was just like, oh my God, this is like a Neil Steele novel in front of me now.
And in reality, Neil could have stood up and pointed the way to the door with both hands behind his back.
Oh my God!
Like Neil was ready. Like, and I don't know why. I mean, maybe Neil's an exhibitionist. As Neil told Dylan, you don't know anything about us. Like, maybe Neil and Allison are straight up freaks.
They might be the other swingers.
They might be. They might live near Bob and Trudy.
But I guess I can maybe understand Allison has now made a connection and just needs someone to talk to.
Right.
Teens or adults be damned, like who cares? But then for Neil to stay there again, like for someone to not go, maybe this should be between you all and not us. Like, why none of the kids said, this is weird that you're talking to us?
Well, I mean, I think Brandon did and Neil did. Neil's like, why are you making me do this in front of all these kids?
Yeah, that's true.
Like he wants to bone in front of the kids. He doesn't want to emote. There's things Neil's interested in and things he's not interested in sharing. I mean,
maybe Allison does need to divorce Neil, and not for the reason she thinks.
I don't know. I think those two crazy kids are going to be all right. I mean, I don't know. There's zero chance we ever find out. Spoilers. But
what?
I know. I'm sorry to have found a way to shock you. Almost 30 episodes into watching 902. I know. But yeah. So I don't know. I
will say too. They don't off. I know they're showing the perspective of, or they're showing from the kid's perspective on divorce. Mm-hmm. However, I feel like they're doing a disservice to kids who also recognize that my parents don't need to be together.
Well, right. But I mean, Dylan says that, right? Like Dylan's perspective is better that than them being miserable around each other all the time and around me.
I'm realizing in talking about this that there's stuff that just didn't hit me or wasn't made clear to me. Again, like Brandon and Neil saying, this is maybe between you all, or why are you doing this in front of us, in front of kids? And then Dylan also, for some reason, this episode just didn't, and that's okay. It didn't land with me because I have none of these experiences.
Not a camper, huh?
I went to 5th grade camp. That was it.
Yeah, I'm not a camper either.
No, I don't. I like being out in nature. I don't like nature touching me.
Yeah, I get that. So, are you Andrea or are you Brenda? Is it the spiders or the rodents that are a problem? Or is it something else?
I don't know what it is because, like, I don't like spiders, but I can kill them. Like the way Brenda went in, I'm a bit more violent. We get cockroaches at work all the time because #New York, and I will immediately be the one with my foot to just slam down on it.
Right.
Because I protect my workers.
You're Dylan, and they're Brandon, and those cockroaches are the rocks on the cliff.
Exactly.
That's how allegory works.
But I would definitely, so yeah, I'm probably in Brenda because, we were moving our trash bins last week, and all of a sudden, just there's Stuart running out of and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I don't like rats. I'm not a rat guy.
No. Sorry to Ben, but no, get out of my...
Right. Yeah. I came in the back a couple days ago, and it was dark, and because it was like 5 p.m. Winter in Chicago. Yep. And the one of the trash cans in the alley was on its side with the lid open.
Oh no!
And I'm like there may be nothing scarier than having to approach that because there could be any number of critters in there. Like there could be a rat, there could be a raccoon. We've had raccoons. There could be a skunk. Like we've also had those. Yeah, I don't want any part of any of that shit.
I know.
And I'm like, just gonna, and thank God it was empty and no problems. But I was like, this is my horror movie. This open trash can on its side on a January afternoon. It was, yeah, fucking horrifying. And I live in the city, like so. But the answer is there are critters everywhere. It's just what type of critter are you going to have to deal with? And when you're in that log cabin made of wet, it's all of them apparently, just out there with these fucking animals in the camping trip. This is why I never went on camping trips. It's not a thing for me.
No, but I did resonate with Andrea in that, like, I would be sitting and reading.
Yeah.
No, that's not how you do it.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. It's funny watching Andrea give Brandon pointers on building the fire because Liam and I are doing a Survivor rewatch.
Oh yeah.
And we just started season 2, and season 2 is interesting because as compared to season 1, because season 1 nobody knew if like really what they were doing, what this show was about, that it was going to be popular.
Yeah.
Like there was this whole weird thing in season 1 where like, is it moral to have an alliance?
Oh.
Or should we just like each week everyone vote their own conscience? And of course the people with an alliance ended up winning because obviously like you get a block of votes, you vote other people out, and they're like, that just feels wrong. So like they get over that at the beginning of season 2, but everyone on season 2 has seen the show now. They understand what they're in for.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like now, season 45, 46, whatever, upcoming, where they practice before they go out there. Like there was a couple seasons ago where a kid, I don't know, he was in his early 20s, was such a Survivor fan that he had 3D printed all of the puzzles that he'd ever seen on the show and practiced the shit out of them. Wow. So that when that puzzle came up, he was like, done. Like it was amazing, but it was also like, oh, they're going to have to redesign this show now. Like all new challenges because that's what people at home are doing. But at the beginning of season 2, they were like, I read the book about how to start a fire. I didn't spend the last 3 months practicing how to start a fire, which is like what the 3D printer kid went next level.
Yeah.
So there was a woman who was like, I read the manual. That's not how you do it. And the guy's like, I have made so many fires.
Yeah.
And it was exactly the same dynamic as Andrea and Brandon.
Probably thousands. You haven't made fires, Brandon.
No, probably not. Especially because the one time we know you went to a lake, you got so drunk you were never going to drink again.
Also, living in California, not the flex that you think that is.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
Like, dude, don't admit that.
I've almost burned down so many acres.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah.
Brandon Walsh's son is the one who started that major one.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's rough. It's rough being a Walsh because you know how to start a fire, but you can't control it once it happens.
Nope.
So that's what happens in this episode. Like, is there any more to dig into in that regard?
Not without being nitpicky.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you think this episode is really about?
Honestly, your theories that you sent me were so good, and as I rewatched it last night, I couldn't think. Like, I really could not figure out what this episode was about, other than, once again, don't wish to grow up, kids. Being an adult is stupid.
I mean, I think that's definitely part of it. Yeah, I think there's something to not wanting to grow up so fast.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's certainly where the episode starts. You know, it's It's all of these kids doing something that's kind of grown up, going on a camping trip without your parents to the middle of wherever. Um, and, I knew a lot of people in high school who did that. They went on those kind of camping trips. I was invited on a couple and I went, there's no way.
Yeah.
There's just no way that this allergy control center can sleep outside. Just isn't going to happen. Yeah. So I bailed on all of those experiences. But I feel like the idea of that camping trip is always so good.
Yeah.
And the idea of more maturity, more freedom, more trust, like Cindy's, is like, don't stay on the trails after dark. Good advice.
Yeah.
One assumes. You don't want to get lost in the woods. Make sure the boys stay on top of you is a little weirder.
Yeah, love it,
as
though.
Parental advice goes, it's good. It's good advice.
Yeah.
So they, like, that draw of adulthood is big when you're that age. And for the audience, like we were talking about, it's big. But it's not, like, everything we've seen of adulthood so far doesn't recommend it as a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
Like, this show is not like, guess what, guys? It gets better. Because that's not what they're thinking.
On a whim, I was listening to I Won't Grow Up from Peter Pan earlier.
Uh-huh.
And, oh man, some parts really hit me because there's a lyric like, I will never wear an expression in the middle of July. And I'm like, oh, I've done that. My favorite lyric is because growing up is awfuler than all the awful things that ever were. And I'm like, yes.
Right,
yes,
sure.
it is. Yes,
right.
it is.
Yeah. But it's also better than middle school.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so, I mean, everything's terrible and everything's great all at the same time, all the time.
All the time.
So, like, the rush to, like, don't wish away time is great advice that you can't give until you're an adult and you cannot receive when you're a kid. You can't hear that advice. I never could. It was always like, I want to get to the end of this thing because it'll be better after I take this test or after this project's over or whatever. Like, every adult like, all the adults in this show have not given us the message that adulthood is great.
And it's interesting. I just had this insight. If you want to get that joke, people, you've got to go to our Patreon. Just saying. We focus all this energy and technology and research on how to lengthen our lives, but not how to stay a kid.
Yeah.
And I would argue, because I'll tell you right now, I have no interest in living to 100.
Right.
I barely have an interest in making it past 65. I'll just be honest. So, and you could argue still that, well, we do get to be immature for longer because look at how humanity is. Like, with getting older, we've gotten to be younger longer, but just
delayed adolescence. Yeah, for sure.
But it doesn't feel that way. Like,
not while you're in it, for sure.
We still force kids to leave all that behind at some point. We still make them, put away your toys at some point. You need to start focusing on adult aspirations.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard not to do that.
I know.
Because, like, you know what I mean? Like, just as a parent, when your kids are sort of on that cusp of childhood and teenage years, and, like, you don't want them to get stuck or not, like, move forward with everybody else in the way that everyone else kind of does. But that's dumb because there's no, like, not everyone's on the same curve. Things happen at different times for everybody, and it's what you tell your kids all along. Like, not everyone gets their first tooth at the same time or learns to walk or talk at the same time. There's no rule book.
Yeah.
for when you have to do those things. And but the kids will look around, and even like in first grade, and go, I wish I'd lost more teeth, because everyone in my class has lost teeth and I haven't lost any yet.
Yeah.
Or I've only lost 6 teeth and everyone else has lost 8.
Or
They
everyone else
do
is
that.
wearing a bra now, but not me.
Right. I mean, me
Like-
either, but not that it's not necessary, but it just hasn't, it's not a fashion choice I've made. But and they do that without us, right? Like they make those comparisons to each other and want to be on that same trajectory,
Yeah.
without adult input. But we also provide input that pushes that along.
Yeah.
When there's a lot of value to, and I think that's why you see 18-year-olds get nostalgic for when they were 12.
Yeah.
Like when you're at the end of high school, you start looking back at the things that you were like super into when you were 10, 11, 12 with great fondness. And everyone around you is like, was that this administration or last administration?
Cue
Like,
vitamin C.
That's how recently it was. Like who was president when that happened? Like it wasn't that far. Was it the same guy that we got now? I don't even remember. But for kids, it's like that was so long ago, and in the halcyon days, in the before times.
Yeah.
And so I don't know.
There's a Jersey Shore quote, and I'm gonna butcher it because I've never watched the show. This is based off of a parody video quoting, like reading the transcripts from it. But they're like, I was 21 then. I'm 23 now. It was years ago.
Yes, exactly. The wisdom one has gained in those 2 years or those 4 minutes, as Brandon tells Brenda.
Yeah.
The lifetime that he lived in those 4 minutes. Yeah, there's no rush. And that's what the episode is about. They're saying it. They're, very clearly saying there is no rush. Like, this is not, like, we understand you want to. And we're going to continue to show you storylines that are things that adults deal with, but we're going to show them to you starring kids. And we're going to convolute the shit out of that for the rest of time, and you're going to have to deal with it. Yeah. And do a podcast about it 30 years later. Everybody.
Yep.
So that's definitely what this episode is about. I think another thing that this episode might be about is how the theoretical is always better than the actual. Yeah. Like when it's something that you're like theoretically going on a camping trip is awesome.
Yeah.
Like you're going to go out there, you're going to, make some s'mores, you're going to have a campfire, you're going to sit out by the lake under the stars, you're going to hang out, maybe you'll get some beers, whatever. This is such a great idea in theory.
Yes.
And then in practice, like Steve doesn't check the weather forecast or doesn't believe the weather forecast. You end up in a shit cabin with wet wood and no food, and you can't. Although, I don't know why Steve doesn't go into the liquor store and buy some food with that $50.
Okay, yeah.
Totally could have done that. You totally could have solved that problem, Steve-O. That was real dumb.
Yeah.
But, it's so much less good than what you think it's going to be, this thing. And then Neil and Allison are like, getting married is so great in theory. In practice, we suddenly have to deal with this lack of communication that's been happening between us for at least the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And now there's these real life implications to what we're doing. And having a kid is really great in theory. In practice, is pretty tough. It's also really great. But it's like, wow, this is harder in actuality than it is when it's just a theory.
Yeah.
In theory, love conquers all. in reality, that doesn't buy you food. You know, like so.
Killed Romeo and Juliet.
Well, lack of communication killed Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
That whole situation could have been solved with a conversation.
With a sassy gay friend.
Well, I mean, for sure. What couldn't? I just, Romeo and Juliet, those kind of things always irritate me because I'm like, if you guys had just sat down for 35 seconds and talked this out, none of this shit would have happened.
That's true.
And, that's kind of what's going on with Neil and Allison.
Yeah. Like, if she had just stayed in the room and talked to him and mentioned why this was so upsetting. I mean, this is the basis of all romantic comedies,
Right.
Lack
Which is
of
why,
communication is what adds drama.
Yeah. And also what irritates me.
Same.
Unless there's a reason that, it didn't happen. Just the standard, you only heard, the first half of the... It's the president of the New England Busybody Society on the other end of the phone in White Christmas.
Yeah.
It's like, God, if you just heard the whole... ask a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Don't just run off and go talk to the teenagers in the wet cabin next door about how everything's terrible because Neil today doesn't want kids, just like Neil 3 weeks ago didn't want kids. Neil ain't changed. Nothing's going on with Neil. Neil's just a guy. He's the same as he was yesterday because he's not privy to all the new shit. Which is why you pay the dude. He keeps you up to date. It's a very complicated case, Maud. Lots of ins, lots of outs, a lot of what have yous.
God, I've got to rewatch this movie.
So good. They just new shit has come to light, Neil, and now that you know it, you can figure this out a little bit. But again, in theory, we got 9 months to get used to the idea, and I'm sure that I will. Ooh. And Dylan says, yeah, but what if you don't? I got a fruitcake mom and a dad in jail. What if you don't?
Yeah, it would be very interesting if we got to see them, in hell, 10 months, because 9 months is one thing, but because you could be all excited once it comes out and is all cute, mm-hmm. or like my mom and say, can you clean her up, please?
She's a mess.
It's valid. I wouldn't want to hold. But it would be more interesting to see him in a year. How is he dealing with this? Has his mind changed? What's going to happen?
Yeah. I mean, his mind has definitely changed one way or the other because it's just different.
Yeah.
Your mind has changed if you haven't slept for 3 months. That's it is physically changed.
Yikes.
And that's that's what happens, kids. But I mean, kids. Our audience is my age.
Yeah.
So, I'm not telling you nothing you don't know. Anything else that this thing is actually about? I can't tell if we've gone too deep or not deep enough with this episode.
I think we've gone deep enough, and I'm glad because I really wasn't sure what I was going to talk about with this episode.
Yeah. To me, the heart of the episode is them in the cabin talking about how they'd like to be older or not.
Yeah.
That's the heart of the episode. But the things that you remember from it are the silly bullshit at the end.
Yeah.
And David with the video camera, his cinema verite, shit. And the big everybody brings their hands in.
Oh my God.
Because it's in the opening. I don't know if it's in this year's opening credits, but it is a shot that's in the opening credits, probably starting next year. So it's it's a shot that's iconic because you've seen it a million times as you watch the show.
Yeah.
So, and you're like, oh, that's from the camping episode. That's the one where Brandon almost fell off the cliff.
Yeah.
That's not the one where there was a married couple in the cabin next door that almost got divorced because she didn't tell him that she was pregnant before they got married. Like you were like this married couple, and I'm like, oh fuck, right, there's a married couple in that episode.
Yeah.
But I didn't remember why she got mad at him. Like I didn't remember any of that stuff, and I've seen it a million times. I remember the rocks under Dylan's chest, ready to fall on Brandon's face when he could have just laid down.
Yep.
That's what I remember about this episode. That's the thing that sticks. So this was one of those where I'm like, I look at the coming up next week and I'm like, oh, fuck, I remember that episode. There's stuff to talk about. And then it's a totally different thing than what I remembered it to be. I didn't remember all of the sad divorce talk.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You didn't remember Donna had her period?
I didn't. Okay, was that Steve's fault that she didn't have anything with her?
Oh yeah,
like when he went through her 16 bags of shit, he threw out the tampons. Like,
I don't think it was even that pointed. I think he looked at her bags and just picked one, the smallest one up, and said, "This is the one you can take."
Yeah, no, I don't think he went rooting through her bags to like remove the sanitary supplies.
You would have been disgusted.
Oh yeah, no, he would. He's like, "What are these?" But so it like, because I was gonna say Donna probably should have thought about that when she packed, and then I remembered that Donna overpacked, and that the reason she didn't have all of the stuff that she packed is because of Steve. So for sure, he picked up the bag that had that stuff in it and got rid of it. You know.
And going back to swingers, I feel like Brandon is going to be the swinger of the group because he's just always putting his arm around, giving all the girls a kiss on the cheek. Like,
yeah, it's true. Yeah, no, Brandon is he's physically, visibly affectionate to
it's beautiful.
everyone.
It's beautiful, man.
It's so much love.
Yeah.
So much love. Speaking of things not packed, I think we need to just briefly talk about Chekhov's hiking boots.
Yeah. I love that so much.
I don't understand. Here's what I don't get about the hiking boots. Like, one, it doesn't make sense that Brandon the Boy Scout would wear his tennis shoes at all.
No, it does not.
He would have worn the hiking boots for the drive.
That's I said that on the rewatch. I went, why didn't you wear these shoes?
Yeah, he would have, because he's the guy who knows how to make the fire. Like, you know, Brandon is the Boy Scout. He knows this stuff. He wouldn't have worn tennis shoes. And you don't need him to be wearing tennis shoes for him to fall off the side of that cliff.
Also, we don't go hiking as much because New York.
Right.
Everything's an hour out if we want to go, hour plus. But like when we lived in Portland, Oregon, we went hiking all the time. And that place is one of the wettest places in the country. We didn't have hiking boots. We survived. Like, it's called don't walk further out on the fucking ledge.
Right, yeah. And it didn't look like he fell because it was wet.
No.
The ground gave way. You know, like the edge of the cliff gave way. Yeah. And that's why he fell. It didn't matter that he didn't have these boots on.
No.
Although maybe he doesn't lose one of the boots.
Yeah.
On one foot, and then you don't get that wonderful. Well, he lost a shoe. Remember?
I know, but I was looking on IMDb, and one of the fun facts was that he totally has both of them on when he comes back.
No, that's funny. Yeah, continuity is wonderful.
Yep. Boom.
Yeah. Oh, you saw the boom at one point. When did you see it?
I finally saw the boom. I think it was when they were in the cabin. It was Brandon and Andrea talking to Neil and Alice, and all of a sudden I just see this like.
Oh, funny! I missed it.
I was and
it's always in things like that. It's like in Brenda's room or in the office of the Blaze. You know, the newspaper at school.
Yeah.
It's always scenes like that, and all of a sudden, just...
shout out to the boom guy.
Yep, shouts to the boom guy, non-union boom guy, season 2.
You know, he's probably young. He hasn't worked up his upper body.
I was a boom guy. Holding the boom is not easy.
No, of course not.
It's tiring. I've been the boom guy.
I don't envy them at all, but I always
Yeah.
joke about flirting with them.
Well, sure.
Like if I was on The Bachelor, I would be like, "What's up, man?"
You know why? Here's how it's easy to flirt with the boom guy because his hands are engaged up here. You can just walk up and
gross, inappropriate.
What? Is that not how people flirt?
No, it is not.
I'm old. I don't know how people flirt anymore.
That's inappropriate, Jeff.
I'm inappropriate. What are you talking about? All right, so what did this make you nostalgic for?
It's always two things, or it hasn't been in a while. But obviously the hand in, say something, then yeah, hands up, woo.
Yep. Unnecessary cheering.
You don't see that anymore. Also, I went to 5th grade camp, which was a trip 5th graders could go on at my school, and I only went because my sister didn't, and I thought I'm going to be cooler than her and go.
Yeah.
Because I'm not afraid.
Right.
And I mean, it was fun, but that camp was falling down because like half of the doors to the cabins were like clawed and chewed off by raccoons.
Oh, God.
I actually sat in. So I was an early riser even as a kid. So I was sitting and staring out the window one morning and I watched a little raccoon crawl into the boys' cabin and I just giggled to myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is going to go badly, and I cannot wait to see everyone run out of that room.
Yeah. So it wasn't the most fun, but it was fun in its own way, and I now know that I'm not a camper.
Yeah.
I
mean, I've known that for a long time. I'm not a camper, but oh shit! All right, I just had a because I was trying to figure out what we were gonna Peach Pod After Dark for this one, and I have an idea. Have you ever seen Deliverance?
No, I have not.
It's a movie about a camping trip that I'm not going to say that I like this movie, but I am going to say that it's a worse camping trip than this one.
There's also what's that Anthony Hopkins, Alec Baldwin?
Oh, fuck that. I hate that movie so much. I hate that movie.
What? Because today let's kill the motherfucker.
I watched that movie with Bob Knight on his birthday.
Oh my God. Is that The Edge. That's the movie. You hate that? Is that his favorite movie?
No, we just happen to be in the same theater as Bob Knight and his wife watching that movie. No, here's why I hate that movie. Because you better be careful out here in the bush. If you have a bird strike, your plane's gonna crash. 3, 2, 1. Birds! There are birds! Fuck! Bird! Ah! And then it's like, you got to be careful out here in the woods. If a bear eats a man, it becomes a man-eater for life, and you're going to have to run from the bear for the rest of your life. 3, 2, 1. That bird just ate a man! Like, it's the whole movie. They tell you what's going to happen, and then it happens 3 seconds later, and you're just like, God, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, not Mammoth's best.
I don't like it. It irritates the living shit out of me. But
I can't wait to watch Deliverance.
Yeah, but anyway, that Burt Reynolds is in Deliverance, and Burt Reynolds does a cameo in 90210.
Is he? Yeah. It's laying in his suggestive manner.
I think he always is, even when he's not. So what did that was? We went sideways on Deliverance and the
like Burt Reynolds.
Like Burt Reynolds. So what did this make me nostalgic for? I guess this made me nostalgic for the one time I went on a sleepaway camp. I did that once. It was not great from an allergy standpoint. It wasn't as bad as I think I feared it would be, but it wasn't awesome. I'm not a shower in this nasty ass bathroom kind of guy. But it was a fun thing. By the end of the week, I was having fun. The first 3 days, I was miserable. Like, it just homesick and like can't sleep because you're in a room with like 6 other guys and 3 of them are snoring. And it's just, when you're used to sleeping in a room by yourself and suddenly you're sleeping with other people around, I don't do well. Or I certainly didn't when I was a kid, when you're like sleeping in a strange place.
Yeah.
Like I was never great at sleepovers. I never got good sleep, like I got sleep eventually, but it was hard to go to sleep in a place where I wasn't comfortable. So that was me at a sleepaway camp. But by the end of it, I was having a good time. So my general feeling about sleepaway camp was, yeah, that was good. That was all right. So nostalgic for that shit. Who is your Steve Sanders Memorial worst person of the episode? I think it's a tough one.
It is a tough one because no one was like blatantly an asshole.
Right.
People had, moments of like, oh, come on, man, that's not nice.
Right.
And, there's always, for me, people not appearing in this film
right.
that, that get me. But I'm going to be lazy and say Steve because,
he didn't deliver.
He didn't deliver.
He said he was gonna, and then he didn't.
He's the reason why Donna didn't have her feminine products.
That's true.
So,
but you know what? Like, defensible, like Steve. Like, it's defensible to look at Donna's luggage and go, come on.
Okay, but let her pick the bag, because clearly he just went, this one.
Yeah. I think the problem there is I'm not sure Donna was gonna. Like, I think it would have taken a long time to convince Donna to go through her luggage, and also once she did, to actually be able to make a choice. Like, she seems paralyzed by choice sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, you can't dress the same for every guy. You have to bring 17 bags on a camping trip. But it is like, Steve should have had a little concern for what he was doing and not just like focus solely on the Tetris of packing a van.
Yeah, and also ignored the weather report. Like,
dude, yeah. Everything that happens is Steve's fault, except for Chekhov's hiking boots. That's Brenda's fault.
Listen, she was doing her best to pack and make room for extra clothes for Dylan. Which, that's stupid.
I didn't mean to say that, Dylan.
That was so stupid.
I didn't mean to say that your presence is a problem. But, it kind of is. Like, a little bit. Like,
Okay, a little bit, but it's not, again, maybe it's because I'm almost 35 and I find myself to be a burden in other ways, and I wouldn't. Honestly, right. I would rather someone be that blatant instead of, what I'm saying in my head. Like,
Sure.
Yeah.
That's where the actual is better than the theoretical, because your head is the theoretical part, and what's happening in the world is always better than the story your head's telling you about it.
Yeah.
So, all right, who's the worst person of this episode for me? Steve is the easy answer.
Yes.
I think there's something to be said for the old people who stole his money.
Oh, yeah.
But also, like, thumbs up to those guys, because, like, you just made $50 off this asshole.
I think they completely forgot.
It's very possible. Yeah, it's very possible.
I think they took the money and just got in there and started talking to Jimmy, who runs the store. I gave him the name. And, they completely forgot. And then the guy forgot and was like, I'm just going to close the store now.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go with Allison as the worst person of the episode.
Okay.
Because she could have made other choices in her reaction to Neil being exactly the person she knew he was.
Yeah.
Like, I understand, like, being reluctant to tell him this news in, like, the 2 weeks before the wedding. Because, like, there's a lot going on. It's already a stressful and emotional time. What if he freaks the fuck out? Plus, she's been out there looking for a man, and you're listening to someone who knows, and she done hooked herself one. So, beware, brother, beware. So she wasn't gonna let that happen.
Did she have hot dog instead of a caviar?
You know what? He took her out nightclub, and all she wanted to hear was malted milk. So it's,
she called him brother.
That's right. There's one meatball. That's all. Beware, brother, beware.
Tell him everything.
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 Should I tell him everything? I love that song so much. It's so silly. But I think like she didn't have to run out of the cabin to the teenager's room. Like she had to know that this had to come up.
Yeah.
Right?
It would have made
happen eventually.
Yeah, she got upset at a reaction that hadn't even happened yet. She got upset by the story she was telling herself.
Yes. About how this was going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she could have, like, she knew that at some point, probably on their honeymoon, she was going to have to tell him she was pregnant. So maybe plan that out a little bit.
She had a toast.
She did.
She was going to have a toast with him.
At least she wouldn't have shellfish.
Okay. I mean, I know a sip's is not gonna ruin it. Like, I'm sorry. Right. People were drinking wine for centuries while pregnant.
Right. Also, do you know how much alcohol has been involved in the conception of most people?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, it was there at the start.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that Allison could have handled her shit just a little bit better. But she's not terrible. No one in this episode is terrible.
No.
But if you got to choose, and we do because we say we do,
yes.
Then Allison for me gets worst person of the episode award.
All right.
So
I support that.
Did we do it?
We did it.
I think we did it. I think we got all the way to the end of this one. So join us next week, Cheesemeisters, for season 2, episode 8, Wildfire.
Oh,
and
God, we're not on Ashes to Ashes yet.
We're not on Ashes. I know. I have sold Ashes to Ashes as a conversation that is going to need to be had, and it fucking is. It really is.
Plus, I saw a glimpse of the synopsis, and I was like, no!
It's tough, that one. But before that, we get to meet Emily Valentine, y'all, and that's momentous in its own way. So I can't wait to see your reaction to meeting Emily Valentine and to talk about the next
brunette.
No, not right away.
What?
No, she's not a brunette. No, she is frosted tips. She's short hair and frosted. Yep.
Wow. Traitor.
Yep. Well, you know what? I'm a brunettes guy, and I prefer blonde Emily Valentine. But her later hairstyles are fucking weird. So,
yay!
This iteration of Emily Valentine is the one that I'm super thumbs up for.
Oh, okay.
Just aesthetically.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, Emily Valentine next week, you guys. But until then.
Bye.
Bye.